Welcome back into another episode of Red Zone Talk. I'm Owen Burke. He's Tim Hunt. Episode 28, off-season part 2. Well, free agency slash
Offseason, yeah. You're on the right track.
transaction report part 2, I guess, if you want to call it. If you haven't checked out part 1, please do so either afterwards if you want to hop over there. We went through some winners and losers as far as teams went for free agency.
Fun fact: Part One's been our most viewed / listened to podcast this season. So
How about it? Hey,
yeah,
you know what that means, folks? You got to go listen to it if you haven't already. I'm sure
there you
everyone
go.
that's here currently is probably the reason why it's so listened to. But if you haven't, go check that out. Today, we're going to dive into some of the bigger moves, just player by player, and also talk about the trades that have happened up to this point. Because we didn't really dive into the numbers on a lot of the contracts, and we didn't talk about any trades last week. So
Yeah,
that's what today's for.
and we were more team specific than I think we were
Mhm.
player to player. So
Yeah.
let's jump into our first one here. The biggest free agency signing of the offseason here: Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. He signed a 4-year, $180 million deal. $100 million of it's guaranteed. Um, I think we talked about it a little bit last episode, but I really like this signing.
Mhm.
It's essentially a 3-year contract is really what it is. Kirk Cousins isn't like he isn't locked in forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This isn't
Yeah.
like we have to pay him all 4 years. It's not a Russell Wilson situation, right? Like, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to get to that point. His game isn't built like that. Um, but like we said last time, this division is the most competitively open, and this propelled them into a position where they are by far and away the favorites going into next year, right? Like
Yeah.
we talked about it. The Saints didn't get any better. They got worse, if anything.
Yeah.
Um, Derek Carr is still not the guy he used to be in Oakland for some reason. Like it's just the
Yeah.
magic is gone in New Orleans with him.
Yeah.
Um, Tampa Bay, they had to pay Baker Mayfield, and we both love Baker Mayfield, but everyone on that team got a year older, and it wasn't a young team last year. So
Yeah.
uh, that's always going to be a struggle. And then why am I blanking on? Oh,
Carolina.
oh yeah, Carolina's just bad. They're
There's a
just
reason you're
bad.
blanking. Yeah.
Yeah,
They've went out and spent God knows how much money this offseason and are probably going to field 10 to 15 new starters combined between the two sides of the ball, but I don't expect them. The thing is, you're like, oh, I don't expect Carolina to hop up and be in contention for this division. But if Atlanta doesn't win 11 games, everybody's in contention. So, I mean,
pretty much.
that's
Yeah,
that's where we're at. As far as the Kirk Cousins deal, like I don't know if I would say I'm a huge fan of it. Obviously, I'm a fan because again, we know how talented this offense is. You were high on this team last year, and they should have been better had they had Kirk Cousins last year.
right.
Especially the way Kirk Cousins was playing through 5 weeks before he tore his Achilles last year. That team may have won 14 games. I mean, Kirk Cousins was on a tear, and we know how talented this group is.
This team is doing a complete reset to me, and this is why
Mm-hmm.
it makes so much sense. They took what 3 guys in the top 10, top 15 in the first round the last 3 years in a row.
Top 10.
So top 10, right? Okay, I couldn't remember if Drake London was a top 10 or
Yeah,
not.
I want to say so. Pitts was 4. I want to say
Or
London. I want to say London and Robinson was 8,
right, Robinson was 8.
and I think London was 7 if I remember right.
7, right?
I know that they were top 10s.
So this is a team that's really struggled to find a QB since Matt Ryan left, right?
Yep.
Basically, they haven't made the playoffs since Matt Ryan left, and I think they
Mm-hmm.
missed it his last year there. And what did they do? They retooled, right? They got really good weapons that are really young, and they said, hey, what's the missing piece, right? What's going to elevate us from winning 7 games up to, that 12, 13, 11 mark? And Kirk Cousins is the guy, right?
Yep.
Like Kirk Cousins is able to lead Minnesota to the playoffs, even though that was a good roster, right? Kirk Cousins, here's what Kirk Cousins does well. He joins really good rosters and takes them to their potential. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy that's going to like exceed that potential, and he's not going to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. I'm not
No.
saying that, but this team's going to be better than they were last year, and they were pretty good last year.
Yeah, and I think the part that I don't love where it goes from a love to a like for me again, I do think it's not being talked about enough that this is a 35-year-old coming off an Achilles tear. Like I do think that should be somewhat of a factor in this. It's one of the harder injuries to come back from. But
Yeah.
again, if it was pay Kirk Cousins to sit on your hands for another year, I would pay Kirk Cousins, right? So, and just to throw the retrospect in there again, and I'll talk about the retrospect aspect when it comes to Calvin Ridley as well. Last offseason, they had a chance to get Lamar Jackson at 230, and they were like, we would rather have 35-year-old Kirk Cousins post Achilles at 180, and could have had a former league MVP at 230. So again, in retrospect, you're like, and again, Calvin Ridley, we'll talk about AJ Brown when we get there. But again, if it was sitting on your hands or making this deal, I'm making this deal 9 out of 10 times.
And in the retrospect is a little bit grade because, yeah, you could have given Lamar that money, but he was a restricted free agent. So Baltimore's just matching that deal. And, he goes, you
Most
did all
likely.
that work for nothing.
Yeah.
And what do? You victimize your quarterback, right?
Mhm.
You say, hey, Desmond Ridder, we don't actually believe in you that much. We tried to sign Lamar Jackson, but good luck. Go win us. Go make it. Go push to the
Yeah,
playoffs this
go
year.
make it happen this year.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I understand not doing that deal, especially with a young quarterback like Desmond as their starter last year. The other thing I'll say is Kirk Cousins' Achilles scares me a lot less than Aaron Rodgers, right?
Fair.
Part of Aaron's game is what makes him special is his ability to move. I don't know, like that's part of Kirk Cousins' game, but it's probably like 5%,
Yeah.
3% of his game. So it's like, oh, you're pulling that away from Kirk Cousins. It's like he's still going to be a pocket merchant, and that's
Yeah.
really what you want him to be.
That's true. That is a good point. Yeah. But overall, we both like the signing.
Yeah.
Again, this team had to do something at the quarterback spot, and they finally got it done.
So next quarterback deal we're going to talk about, and I think the last quarterback deal that we're going to talk about as far as free agency goes, Russell Wilson signs to a 1-year, $1.2 million deal to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which honestly, again, is a great value signing for Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Did Pittsburgh made the playoffs last year, didn't they? I'm already forgetting last
Yeah,
season.
they squeaked in and then got bounced by Buffalo round
That's
one.
right. Yeah, with Mason Rudolph. And right, Pittsburgh looked at their QB room last year and they did the same thing that Atlanta did, right? They said, what's holding us back? And it's quarterback play.
Mhm.
And I don't love Russell Wilson. I think he's still I think he's a legitimate starter in this league. I think he's better than a lot of people think he is. Now, do I think he's worth 45 million? No, but for 1.2, I think they're getting actually a really good value here for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, the value is 100% undeniable. Like Russell Wilson, anything under 15, under 20 is an incredible value. So the Broncos are paying him $38 million to play in Pittsburgh this year. So I mean, he's
Yeah.
still getting paid elsewhere. Um, as far as him in Pittsburgh, um, the offensive line's been bad for since about 2 years before Big Ben retired, and I don't think it's as bad as it was, but it's nowhere near what to me like a playoff team needs to have as far as an offensive line go. They are definitely bottom 10, bottom 12 in my opinion, and I think it's going to bite them again this year. I think it I was never a huge Kenny Pickett fan, but I don't think it ever helped. I don't think it helps Najee Harris and what he's looked like. And, everybody thought he had a real down year last year, while Jalen Warren was kind of tearing it up. So the question for me is I don't know what this team looks like at the end. They do need some receiver help now. They trade Deontay Johnson away to the Carolina this offseason. So they're left with George Pickens there. There's still some question marks as far as Pittsburgh goes, but Russell Wilson is 100% an upgrade over Kenny Pickett, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, insert Landry Jones, whoever you want here. Anybody they've had since Big Ben, Russell Wilson is now the best quarterback to play there since, undoubtedly.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the Justin Fields deal a little bit later, but
Mm-hmm.
they looked at their core. I mean, and far as their team holes go, let's start there. They're probably going to get the fourth, maybe the fifth best tackle in the draft with where they're drafting. You know what I mean? Somebody's gonna fall to them, so they're going to be able to take tackle in the first, and then in the second round they're going to be able to get a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many wide receivers to go in the first round. Honestly, I think this is again one of those years where somebody's going to take a receiver in the third round who's going to end up being a starter for their team.
Yep.
That's how I think this is the deepest wide receiver class we've seen in a long, long time. Um, so there'll be a lot of value there, but so it shouldn't be too hard for them to patch the holes that they have. They're in good spots, I think, in both of those positions. But um, yeah, they overall went and said, okay, what are we struggling at? Let's take some risks, right? It isn't like neither one of these guys are like guaranteed gonna hit, but both of these guys, both of them are better than anybody they had on the roster last year, right? Whether it's Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph. So I have to respect the move, and they didn't have to commit to either one of them long term, right? So it's an even lower risk of a deal compared to a lot of other people. So
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields are probably the two best quarterbacks to put on a Steelers jersey since 2020, and that was 2 years before Big Ben retired because he tailed off so hard the last couple of years of his career. Like this is legitimately probably going to be the best Steelers quarterback you see in the last 5 years that's going to put on a jersey for them, no matter who it is, whether it's Justin Fields by week 6 or not. Either one of those guys are going to be there. Like it doesn't have anything to do with Russ. I feel like Mike Tomlin's been a little untrustworthy this offseason. Like I just feel like there's been so many things I've heard from Tomlin, and this is just a tangent, but so he tells Kenny he's gonna have a shot to start next year. Like there's gonna be a competition. We're gonna fight for it. He also said in the media, the quarterback of the future is on this roster. It's Mason Rudolph or it's Kenny Pickett. Well, neither of those guys are in town. They signed Russell Wilson and told him it was a starter. So they had to trade Kenny because obviously Kenny Pickett's not happy. He thought he was going to have a chance at this. And then you bring Fields in behind. It's been a very weird offseason and like this is a team that the boat does not get rocked in Pittsburgh. It's a very steady ship usually. And I just feel like we've heard so many contradicting things out of Pittsburgh this year. I'm just very interested in general.
I'm going to disagree with you in a couple of facets here.
Okay.
One, the boat gets rocked often in Pittsburgh. Let's not forget Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell
Yeah.
just absolutely went off the rails in Pittsburgh. So,
Yep.
um,
Tomlin's fault. No, I'm just kidding. Continue.
Yeah, so like let's not act like Pittsburgh's always been this tight ship, well run organization, right? There's been issues there. And two, you have to be careful with some of these inside reports, right?
Mm,
Um, everybody just is like there's no longer filtration of what people think are true. People are just throwing reports out there, right?
fair.
Nobody's really sure, did the Bears actually do Justin Fields a solid by trading him to Pittsburgh? Were there no other offers? Were there actual other offers on the table? It was
Yeah.
reported there was better offers, but they traded him to Pittsburgh because that's what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not, right?
Yeah.
And it and the report was, yeah, Kenny's going to get to compete with Russ. Well, apparently Kenny didn't handle it well, so they traded him to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they trade, it comes out, oh yeah, even though they signed a 1-year deal with Russell Wilson, at the end of the year, they're going to try to reach a multi-year deal at the end of it. They view him as the long-term solution. And it's like, then why didn't they just sign him to a 3-year deal? Right.
Yeah.
Like if that were the case, like to me, I think a lot of this is the agents and, team execs trying to smudge the picture to make whatever side they're on look better.
Fair.
Tomlin hasn't come out and necessarily like said a lot, right? Like he said, "Hey, Russ is the one at this point, and we're gonna see." But by week 4, that could be a completely different story. Like I have
Yeah.
no doubts about that.
Yeah. It's a lot different when you start playing other teams. You're like, he's the guy, and he has a horrible camp or whatever. You're like, he's still our starter. Boy, you have 4 bad games. You're like, never mind. I want Justin Fields. So
Right. Yeah.
it's just, I'm very curious to see. I feel like they usually, and again, like you talk about those departures, and Deontay Johnson was having his issues. That's part of the reason why he got shipped out this
Shipped out.
offseason.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I usually hear a ton as far as the guys coming in. Like the guys leaving, yeah, Kenny, Le'Veon, AB, Deontay. I'm used to that. Like, I don't know. It was just, it just feels weird to me. And again, it's a guy who's around that team somewhat. My parents are fans, and obviously just keeping an eye on the teams in the division. I was just very intrigued by what I heard from Pittsburgh this offseason.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting development. Now, unlike the Falcons, I don't like their position in their division, right? I
Yeah.
still think Cincinnati has more talent than them. I think Cleveland has more talent than them. if Deshaun Watson can ever get it together.
Yeah.
And then obviously Baltimore is one of the top teams in the AFC. So
Yeah.
it's not like this is the fix all. It's like, oh, we're guaranteed to compete for the division this year. It's like that's still not necessarily going to be the case. So, all right, moving along here. Saquon Barkley signed a 3-year, 37 and what is that? 37 and $37 million deal. 26 million of it's guaranteed. We talked about this a lot in the last episode.
Mhm.
I think this is a huge, huge signing for
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I compared it a lot to the CMC deal, right? It makes too much sense to not do that. Just extra firepower. I talked about offensively how it's going to work. You're not going to be able to stack the box against this Philly team. And when it comes to longevity of Saquon, I mean, Jalen Hurts is going to take some carries. They like to spread it around. They're going to still throw the ball a ton. Kellen Moore has been one of the more creative guys on the offensive side of the ball. We didn't get to see that a ton for the Chargers this last year, but think about what he's done in Dallas and what he's been able to produce there. So,
Yeah.
I love the fit here. The guaranteed money's so low that it's like, hey, if unless he tears his ACL week 1, it'll be worth the deal.
I agree. Like, I have no qualms with it at all. Like, pay the man. You're putting him behind a good offensive line. Like you said, they spread it around. Kenneth Gainwell and some other guys are going to get some carries. Jalen will get some goal line work, so he's not getting banged up, he's not getting 3 dives on the goal line
Yeah.
on first, second, and third and goal, because first and goal he might get hit, but guess what? Guess what's coming out on second goal? 92%. So, it's not going to be they're going to be fine. And I think, again, like you said, Kellen Moore didn't really get to show that last year. And I think, again, a lot of that was Justin Herbert had 0 time to throw. It should not be an issue for Philly this year. So they've reloaded on coordinators. They bring in Saquon, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just like the CMC. You're like, you can succeed with Carlos Hyde. Why give up all this money for CMC? Why give it up all for Saquon? You had 1,600 with Miles Sanders. DeAndre Swift just had a great year. Why pay Saquon? Because it gets that much better.
Yeah.
That's why. Because we've seen you take that, you're getting 80%, you're getting real good stuff out of these secondary guys. Okay, well, what can I get out of a top level guy then if I stick him in my system at that point? So, absolute slam dunk, not an issue in the world.
All right, let's jump to this next one, and this is one I want to spend a little bit more time on. This is, I guess, technically it was a trade. Josh Jacobs to Green Bay. No, he signed there. He
I
straight
think
up
he
signed
signed,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. To Green Bay, he signed a 4-year, $48 million deal. Only 12.5 of it's guaranteed. And that's a really important factor. So it's
Yeah.
basically a 1-year guaranteed deal. A lot of people dogged on this. They said it was a downgrade. Why would you do this? And to me, that was really interesting, right? I think Josh Jacobs is an upgrade over Aaron Jones.
I would agree.
Now, is he a 5-tool guy like Aaron Jones is? No, not really. He's not going to catch as much out of the backfield. I understand Aaron Jones was beloved with Packers fans, and I think that's part of this overreaction that we're seeing right now. Do I think Josh Jacobs is a better runner of the football right now? Absolutely, right? He's significantly younger. He's a guy who is going to be able to pound the ball, and I think it's ultimately going to help Jordan Love in his, in the long term because he's a younger guy.
My only issue with this deal, again, is like when you're going into the offseason, your main goal is plugging holes. You're trying to fill gaps, right? Whether it's guys that you had cap casualties, you need to bring in guys that are going to replace them, or just guys that walk, guys that retire, things of that nature. This doesn't happen often where you see a guy of high caliber be on the roster, them go sign a better player, and then move off afterwards. Usually it's like Aaron Jones is a cap casualty. We'll go get Josh Jacobs, right? So the timing of it was weird and anything. Other than that, again, like you said, it's an upgrade. I love the play style in Green Bay. That was always the biggest thing. Like I had, I think, I don't remember who I heard it from, but there was this epiphany moment of like, they've built such, and this, with Aaron Rodgers, they built such an air raid offense with one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But okay, you're winning a lot of games. You're the 1 seed. We have home field advantage. It's 10 degrees and there's a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind in the playoffs. I don't want to throw in this. Hey, would you like to try to tackle Josh Jacobs when it's -10 outside? I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to tackle Josh Jacobs regardless. So, as far as a play style playing in Green Bay, I absolutely love it because, I mean, you want to talk about not wanting to tackle Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, not wanting to tackle Josh Jacobs in the fourth quarter. I don't want to do it when it's cold out either. So, I think it's a huge fit play style wise as far as that goes, being able to lean on the run game down the stretch. Their offensive line's definitely still going to need a little bit of work, right? They let Bakhtiari go. Not that he was playing a ton in the first place, but
Yeah.
still some holes to patch up. But overall, I don't know. I don't know where the beef with this move is as far as people not liking it for Green Bay.
And
So,
to me too, it's an anticipatory move, right? Like you're
mhm.
planning on Aaron Jones. The cliff is coming. It's just when. And I feel like this was, hey, we know it's coming. We're gonna get off before it happens.
I kind of felt like he was 2 tires off already because
Yeah.
I felt like there was a 2 years ago, I mean, to me, he was a lock for a top 10. Like this is a B tier CMC Austin Eckler can kind of do it all out of the backfield kind of guy. And he was quiet this last offseason, right? This Packers offense came on late in the season and kind of exploded. Jordan Love's having this real growth spurt in the second half of the year. And I couldn't tell you how much Aaron Jones affected it. I felt like I never heard his name. Fantasy or otherwise just didn't hear about him down the stretch. So I do agree that, the cliff was coming and they decided to get out of the way. I'm not a huge fan of guys re-signing in division, obviously. I was burned by it a couple times this offseason, but like him turning around and going to Minnesota where they've had the failed Alexander Madison project after the departure of Dalvin Cook. I mean, that's going to be a fun 2 games this year to see what Aaron Jones wants to do against his former team and what Josh Jacobs can try to prove to all the Green Bay fans and all the people that in Minnesota that are saying, "Oh, we got the better running back of the deal, so we're fine," right? So
Yeah.
it's going to be a very fun 2 division games between those 2 teams, I think.
It's gonna be interesting for sure. And it only adds spark to the rivalry, right? Like Brett Favre went there, Greg Jennings went there. A lot of guys leave Green Bay and go to Minnesota for whatever reason. It's just a weird connection.
It is, yeah.
So, all right, jumping into the next deal here. Derrick Henry signed a 2-year, $16 million deal. Again, $9 million guaranteed. So, as much as it is a 2-year deal in quotations, it's in reality a 1-year deal. Um, you're the Ravens fan here. What's your feelings and thoughts?
Um, I mean, there's definitely some more running backs that were higher on my list. Um, Obviously, like I wanted Saquon, like I would have taken a DeAndre Swift. But at the end of the day, when you can pair, and again, like everyone is talking about this, and I think that people are surprised that I'm not more excited about it because they're like, oh, the elusiveness of Lamar Jackson and the power of Derrick Henry in the same backfield. What a terrifying read option to try to guard. Folks, as a Ravens fan, a guy that watches this team quite a bit, it's not that it's not part of the offense. This is not 2019. Lamar Jackson does not run. There's not a lot of designed runs that get called up until when the offense gets stagnant, like you saw it in the Houston game in the second half, coming out of halftime, tied 10-10 in that Houston game. That's when that 2019-esque Lamar Jackson comes out because he's trying to break this stagnant run that the offense is in. But other than that, he doesn't run the ball a ton. So, I mean, if you're expecting to see this devastating read option this year, you're going to be watching highlight tapes because it's not going to happen a ton game to game. So, but overall, I love the fit. A lot of people are curious why we didn't just bring Gus Edwards back. It's a younger Derrick Henry, not as explosive, not as powerful of a name. But Gus Edwards didn't want to come back, firstly. Secondly, this just felt, I mean, this was supposed to happen in week 8. I mean, Derrick Henry was one Titans owner away from being a Raven at the deadline. So I love the signing. There's definitely, again, another team that's got a lot to figure out on the O line. There's only going to be 2 returning starters to that offensive line in Baltimore. They lose Kevin Zeitler to Detroit. So I'm very curious to see what we can put in front of that read option. But I'll tell you again, if you're, trying to defend an I-form power play and you eat a block from Patrick Ricard and maybe you get around it, and you have to turn around and try to tackle Derrick Henry. It's not a fun game to play in December and January to take on a 300-pound fullback. Say you slip that block, oh, here comes Derrick Henry. Yeah, not going to be fun for anyone, especially in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what's going to be where you might see the most out of it is that conservative play calling that's gotten Baltimore in trouble a lot in the last couple of years. That conservative play calling in the fourth quarter is now handing it to Derrick Henry. And again, teams don't want to hit Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter. So I'm curious to see. I don't really think he's lost that much of a step. He's lost, the best running back in the league step, but this is still a top 10 guy to me, truthfully. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what he does. And obviously the deal essentially being a 1 year. If it goes bad, we cut weight and move on next year. That's always a plus when you're able to do that with an older guy. So
to me, this was, hey, we've got to find the Mark Ingram, right? We've got to bring some of that spark and magic back. And I think Derrick, even just for the locker room, I think is going to be super important in Baltimore. Who knows? Patrick Ricard might have to end up playing some guard this year for him.
We might. You're not wrong.
It's just the way that line's shaping up so far. They might have to slip him in there, have him play a little right guard. Just to sign him double team with Tyler Linderbaum and just kind of rock it from there.
He's big enough to do it. Just pull him in anytime we're pulling guards. Just put him at guard for the play.
Pull him every play.
Yep. Up 42s on the offensive line. They're pulling.
They're pulling here. Watch out. Whatever side they're pulling to, everybody run that way.
Yeah, no shit.
But yeah, I like the move. I think it's such a low risk move, and you needed a weapon. Like it felt like this offense last year was okay. It's Lamar and Zay Flowers, and that was kind of it. Like Mark
Isaiah Likely. It was Isaiah Likely was really the third guy there. So
Mark Andrews getting hurt in the middle of the season didn't help much. So I think it's a weapon, right? And that's important. That like this is a team that it's been frustrating because it's like, wow, you have this X factor quarterback, and they just never had the weapons, right? The running back room has been. I mean, honestly, since Mark Ingram left, it's kind of just been a mess, right?
It's been injury riddled. Yeah.
JK's always hurt, and then Gus comes in and plays for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then he gets hurt. And it's just a group of guys that could never stay healthy. And then you looked at the wide receiver room, and it was like, man, I wish they had a 2 on this roster. Like, I think there's still a candidate to sign Tyler Boyd. That wouldn't shock me if he ended up in Baltimore. It would free him up a little bit to maybe draft defense or offensive line with their first round pick.
We've got to go line at 30. Like there's a lot of people that want, Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, whoever it is that falls. I'm like, folks, we have a massive problem on the O-line. Like, Patrick McCarry might step back in and start somewhere. I'm not a fan of teams being like, oh, we lost 2 guys. Well, we'll just make his backup start. He's a backup for a reason, folks. That's not something you want to like just be A-okay with, So definitely still some work to do there. But again, like you said, this is easily a team that should be able to go receiver in the second round and be able to find that guy still.
Yeah, they'll be able to find a piece. Like, and you just want to add, like you just don't want another Zay Flowers, and there'll be guys there that aren't Zay Flowers. So.
And what I'll tell you is, like, as far as doing mock drafts, or if you want to try to predict what Baltimore is going to do at 30, you will not know until pick 29 has been read on the stage, because Baltimore will not know until they're looking at whoever's available at 29, because whoever's available at 30 and the best available of corner, tackle, and receiver, that's who's going there. And obviously we're not going to know until those first 29 picks are in the books. So,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right. Calvin Ridley signed with the Tennessee Titans for a 4-year, $96 million deal. $50 million is guaranteed. So it is a 2-year deal. This is probably my least favorite signing of the offseason.
110%.
It feels like we hope this is more of a projection. I feel like you see this deal a lot in baseball, where some guy gets like $100 million, and you're like, man, why is that guy getting $100 million? And they're like, we think he could be a 35 home run a year guy. And you're like, you think he can, and you're paying him that much?
Well, he hit 18 last year. If he just like doubles it, this is a steal. And you're like,
You're like, how does that work? Or it's like an NBA draft pick where you're like, they took that guy, and it's like, yeah, this guy was a rotational guy for UNC last year, but he's the 5th overall pick because
Yeah.
he's 7'4", and it's like,
Devin
okay,
Book. I think it's Devin Booker never started a game at Kentucky, and he went in the lottery, and it's
yeah.
worked out. So I mean, it's not that it never works, but it's definitely a sketchy thing in the moment. When it's happening.
Yeah, and we've really only seen Calvin Ridley had success when he's had a true one across from him, right? When he had Julio on the other side, that was the best we've seen of him, and we really haven't seen that since.
Yeah, and the thing that's honestly scaring, like you could take it a step further. Not since he's had a true one across from him, since he's had one of the best receivers in the league across from him. Right, this was top 4, top 5 Julio Jones that he was playing across. That's where his production came from. So, and again, in retrospect, a year ago, Mike Vrabel cussing in the war room because they have to trade AJ Brown because they don't want to pay him 4 years, $100 million, to turn around and give 29, 30-year-old Calvin Ridley
Yeah.
96, coming off of the worst year of his career, I guess minus the year before where he was suspended for the whole year. Like, he had under 300 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. And they're like, 92 million. Who cares? Like, it is just, and again, it could work because we were both extremely high on him going to Jacksonville last year. We're like, oh, great move for Jacksonville. No risk. If it goes well, you pay him. If not, you let him go. And sure enough, it didn't go well. They let him
Let him
walk.
go.
So no fault there. This guy's a great route runner. I think he'll get separation, but it's hard for me to justify. Like, it's hard to justify the deal itself with what Ridley did last year. It's harder to justify when I don't know who my quarterback's going to be. And I mean, you're like, oh, well, it's Will Levis. Well, like, I'm not confident in my quarterback play regardless, right? And that hinges what a receiver is going to be able to do for you on the football field. This 92 million might look pretty good if he had Patrick Mahomes thrown to him. Here's the difference. He doesn't. Like,
Oh, this was a classic case of supply and demand, right? Like
mhm.
the supply of wide receivers this offseason was extremely low, but the demand for them was
High.
incredibly high. The real ones didn't make it to the free agency market, right? Michael Pittman got tagged, Mike Evans re-signed, and then T. Higgins got tagged. Yeah,
Yep.
T. Higgins got tagged. So your top 3 guys were immediately pulled off the market, and there was a lot of teams in need of a wide receiver. So he kind of got the oops. He was probably the best guy on the market with that one upside still,
Mhm.
and so he just got paid a ton of money. To me, that's kind of what that deal was. So, um, talking about his counterpart here, probably the next best available wide receiver, Marquise Brown signs a 1-year, $11 million deal. Um, 7 million of it's guaranteed. This is a great Chiefs move right here. It really is. It frees them up to, maybe not also have to take a wide receiver in the first round. They can let, they everyone was putting Mitchell to them, and I think with Ridley now, I don't know if I really want a Mitchell there, right? Like I think I'd rather have a possession catch kind of guy or a big body guy.
Mhm.
Um, so I really like this move for Brown and for the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs, it immediately makes their wide receiver room significantly better than it was last year.
Yeah.
Um, and for him, this is a chance to prove, hey, I'm a legit one. This is what I'm able to do with Patrick Mahomes is tossing me the ball.
Yeah, so I mean, he had a great year on his way out of Baltimore, just short of 1,000 yards. And again, this is the Greg Roman offense. The ball wasn't getting thrown around. He got targeted the ninth most that year. His last year in Baltimore, he was the ninth most targeted receiver in the league.
Dang.
So yeah, which people don't talk about a lot because people are like, oh, well, he got shipped out. He's not getting a lot of opportunities. So there's a couple things here. Firstly, I agree with you. I love the signing. I love the fit. If you thought McCole Hardman was the next Tyreek Hill, no one's the next Tyreek Hill, firstly, but I'll tell you, this is your B tier right here. McCole Hardman's your C tier, Hollywood's your B tier, Tyreek's your A tier. Like that is to me kind of where this lines up and fits. Now again, ninth most targets obviously didn't go well in Arizona. The Kyler Murray injury just really sabotaged what he was going to be able to do there. Hard to catch the ball 60 yards down the field when you're having a backup throw to you. Whether it's Josh Dobbs or whoever it is, those explosive plays just don't happen. The chemistry isn't there on the broken plays either. Um, I he did have a little bit of a drop issue in Baltimore. Like he had quite a few games that I can remember. I remember vividly the longest field goal in NFL history in Detroit from Justin Tucker. Hollywood dropped, I think, a total of 5 passes, and 3 of them were touchdowns in that game. And so I'm praying that stays away from Kansas City. I think they've had their fill of drops this last year alone.
Yeah.
But as long as that problem doesn't return, this is a slam dunk. I mean, there's no beef with this at all. I'm upset that I really wanted him to come back to Baltimore. Like, I don't think the fit would have been as great, but he's great friends with Lamar and another one of those guys that just kind of fit the culture of what our locker room was. So I think he'll go to Kansas City, and I think they're going to be dangerous, man. Patty throwing to him is not going to be fun to try to defend with Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce underneath, and it's not going to be fun for a lot of NFL defenses. And anytime you could say that after a signing, you're like, okay, we did pretty well, right? Especially for $11 million. So
Yeah, it was a good deal for them. So staying inside that division, Christian Wilkinson signed a 4-year, $110 million deal with $87 million of it being guaranteed with the Las Vegas Raiders. This is, to me, a defensive coach building a great defense, right? He said, I've got Max Crosby. What can I do to make this defense even more scary? And adding interior pass rush is great. They might not have anyone playing quarterback for him, but they might hold a lot of offenses to 10 and 14 points, right? Like, that's how dominant this defense has the potential to be.
yeah.
Don't sleep on them to just take, Michael Penix in the first. Like, wouldn't be shocking to me that they just go out and get a rookie QB because it's just not pretty. I mean, and you're a Gardner Minshew guy, but I just don't think he could be your plan.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I love Gardner, but I don't think that you can especially in this quarterback class, sit there and be like, we're good with what we've got. Like
yeah,
it just can't be what it is.
I like the signing. I don't, they don't need another offensive weapon, right? You still have Michael. Is it Mayer? I
Yeah,
was mess it up.
Michael
Yeah,
Mayer.
Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer, still your tight end. So, he's a viable middle of the road type of guy. Maybe he'll take a step forward. You've got Devontae. You've got Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
This offense is loaded, right? Besides, I guess now running back and quarterback.
They have a lot of faith in Zamir White, so they'll probably draft a guy in the 3rd or 4th and call it a day as far as the running back room goes. Like,
Yeah.
if a quarterback slides, like say if Penix is there in the 2nd round and they can go like corner, edge rusher at 13, Penix in the 2nd, running back in the 3rd, like this, are they going to compete for the division? No, but they will be damn well improved and on the right track towards being competitive in the long run.
Yeah. At the very least, they'll be an interesting team. And yeah, I mean, who knows? I think everyone's got a lot of people are mocking 5 or 6 QBs in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's potential that you see Bo and Michael Penix fall to the 2nd.
It's possible.
Like, I don't think it's crazy to say that out loud, and that's what ends up happening. But
at the same time, McCarthy is climbing boards faster than I think I've ever seen a quarterback climb. And if 4 of the first 5 picks are quarterbacks, we may see teams get desperate and just say, "Okay, we're not going to wait." Like this is,
yeah,
we're at pick 6, and there's only 2 of them left that I feel comfortable taking this high. We're not going to risk waiting to the 2nd.
Yeah. Another great edge rusher that signed. Danielle Hunter signed a 2-year, $49 million deal, $48 million of it being guaranteed. With the Houston Texans.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only point that I will let you do the whole segment. Yeah. You can do that.
What a great signing.
Segment. Yeah. You can
I'll sketch it up.
Yeah, you can sketch it up. I think this was a good value, right? Like with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that defense becomes even more scary. Again, this isn't a team that necessarily needed to go out and chase a wide receiver. Obviously, they don't have a 1st-round pick now.
Mm-hmm.
They gave it up to Arizona, but didn't really matter because it was going to be kind of late anyways. So it wasn't like they were going to get much. And it's such a short-term deal too. They didn't lock themselves into somebody super expensive who might not be good, you know what I mean, later on. So I thought it was a great signing.
This might be my favorite signing from the offseason, truthfully, because it has more so to do with everything that happened from at their edge rusher spot. When you draft a stud, right, or whether you draft him or you have him or he has a breakout year, whatever, when you have your one and your two has a breakout year because of it, right? Jonathan Greenard comes on and plays great. He has 12 and a half sacks. He looks fantastic across from Will Anderson Jr. You do not double down and be like, oh, we got to bring Greenard back. He just also had a breakout. He played 12 and a half. He had a breakout because he's playing across from Will Anderson, right? So what do? Not only do you not pay that guy, I'm going to go get a guy that's already proven. I'm going to stack him across from Will Anderson, and now we're going to get real dangerous, right? And Danielle Hunter is not 35, folks. Like, I feel like a lot of people have this perception that Danielle Hunter's over the hill. He's not as good as he usually is. This is 29, all right? Has he taken a step back in the last year or so? Yeah, I mean, I would say, but partially, he was such a freaking monster at 26 that at 29, he does look like he's lost a little bit of a step. This guy is well within being in his prime and lining up across Will Anderson now. Pick your poison. Who are you going to double team? Because the other guy's going to sack you. Like, I absolutely love letting your two graduate and go get overpaid in Minnesota and just bringing in the guy that, is replacing him, right? Greener goes to Minnesota, gets overpaid. You bring in Hunter on a pretty solid deal for 2-3 years. What'd you say?
2-year deal. Yeah.
2-year deal, 49, almost fully guaranteed. It's a short-term deal, and you put a very talented guy and a guy that's a one. Danielle Hunter is a one as far as edge rushers are concerned, in my opinion. Maybe a lower tier one, but a one nonetheless. You stack him across from Will Anderson. I freaking love it. It's absolutely fantastic, I would say. So it's a great deal. I could not speak more about how much I love what they did with this signing.
Can you do me one favor and start a sentence with brother and then also end it with brother? Um, Talking about Danielle Hunter some way.
I have to start the sentence with brother too.
Well, that's what he does, isn't it? Doesn't he go brother and then he kind of ends it with brother as well?
Listen, brother, this is the greatest move of the offseason. There's absolutely I already bought the jersey. Danielle Hunter, it's on the way, brother. I don't know what to tell you.
There we go.
Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Derek Stingley Jr. This team, yeah,
I was good. Better than I can do. So
yeah, I can't stop doing it. Yeah, if you see this the rest of the show, just know that that's what it is, and I just have a problem and I can't stop myself. So
I didn't realize until I've really started to listen, he has that Trump rhythm to him.
Thank you. I have tried to tell people that,
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't know. Like, he does. He does. He has the Donald Trump rhythm too. I think that's what makes it so funny to me because
It's just like bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. And usually
Bum.
I can't find it funny when it's Trump because he's saying something that I'm just like, that's fucking so out of left field right now. But it's just a 25-year-old talking about, or, a 22-year-old talking about what the fuck ever. And I'm like, this is fucking hilarious.
I do also find it amazing that he's had this like blow up of like, now he's playing with like Demario Davis and Sauce Gardner and
he's playing Madden against Sauce and Vontez Perfect. Like,
yeah, that's who it is. Yeah, what did I say? Yeah, I think it's Demario Davis, but yeah, Vontez Perfect. Like he is like the NFL community is accepting him in as like the face of the Madden side of things, which I think I
love it.
Super.
There's one collab I'm missing right now in my life, and it's Sketch and Papa Meeks, and that's MMG and Sketch. Is a collab that's still, I mean, we've got Sketch and Jinxie. We've had Sketch Queso and Jinxie. Now I need the Madden world to come together. I need Sketch and MMG in a video together.
Ooh. I'm old school, so I still watch Willamette. I think it's like the best Madden series that's existed. Yeah, I think it's just super entertaining. Now I don't know if Papa is the same what's the right word, the same flavoring as Sketch,
Yeah, definitely not.
Sketch will cross a line but then like apologize for it and walk it back, where I mean Papa will deep throat his mic almost every episode. So.
I might have a better one. God, what's his name? The guy that does the Madden franchise, the rebuilds.
Bangle?
Yeah, Bangle and Sketch. You know how Bengal tosses him in there, and you're like, "Oh, Ray Lewis in the first round. What a killer pick! Great pick!" Or like just things like
Yeah.
that. Him and Sketch, that would be fucking fantastic.
Yeah, Bengal's like Mr. Cool and collected. Like
Yeah.
he's just never Bengal
Uh,
never lets anything get to him
yeah.
really.
You're
So
like, "What a killer pick!" Just
yeah.
Sketch. What do you mean by that, brother?
What do you mean by that?
That's golden.
All right, let's jump into trades here.
All right.
Um Keenan Allen to the Bears for a 4th round pick. I liked the deal. For the Chargers, it's a little confusing on the Charger side of things. I get that you didn't have the cap space. You know, everybody who stayed took less money, right?
Yeah.
And Keenan Allen came out and said, "Hey, I had the best year of my career. I'm not going to take less money after that year." And I understand it from that point, but he's 31. You know what I mean? He's somewhat expendable in that aspect of it. Now, for the Bears, I love this move, right? You're bringing Caleb into a really good, assuming it's Caleb Williams, but whatever rookie QB you choose to take, you're bringing him into a really stable situation. And Keenan Allen doesn't have to be the one. DJ
Nope.
Moore is there, and it is
Yep.
a capable one.
Yep.
I think this is one of the more interesting wide receiver duos in the NFL right now, right? Keenan Allen's a one, DJ Moore's a one, and you have them paired together. So
I could say without a shadow of a doubt, this is the best situation I think a number one pick will ever step into as far as quarterbacks go. They pay DeAndre Swift. The offensive line is okay. Like, it's not great, but to me, it's right in that 15, 16 range. You're not paying them a ton of money, but they're also not losing you games. You have Cole Kmet. They bring in Gerald Everett behind him. You have DJ Moore. You have Keenan Allen. You draft a speedster in the third. You put Caleb Williams in the middle of it, and you ride yourself into hopefully a 10-win season. They pay Jalen Johnson. This team has done so well to me in the offseason. I think they still need some work at corner. I think hopefully that's where they go with pick 9. But overall, as far as Keenan Allen goes, like as far as the Chargers, I agree with you. Like you had 4 guys that were possible cap casualties this offseason. And it was, to me, it was Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Will, Keenan Allen. Personally, I would have got rid of one of each of them, right? Lose an edge rusher, lose a receiver, not just dump both receivers. Because now, again, you have pick 5, and you could get the best tackle in the class. You could get the second best receiver in the class. Or if the Vikings, somebody gets aggressive, goes to 4 and takes a quarterback, you could have the best receiver at 5. Like it is possible for that to happen now. So you have a chance of the best tackle, the best receiver, but now you've created a massive hole at both spots, in my opinion. The offensive line needs a lot of work, and you have Quentin, Mr. Drops the Ball a lot, Johnson, as not only your one receiver, but to me, kind of your only guy that I can see. What do you have? Joshua Palmer still there? Like,
yeah, Joshua Palmer is probably the second option now, which
it's
is
just,
you like him as your. I mean, you liked him when he was the second and third to Keenan
yeah.
Allen and everybody else. Like it is interesting. Like it was the philosophy of either you take the pay cut or you don't stay, and I think that's
Mhm.
probably what they proposed to all 4 guys. And 2 of them said no, and it happened to be the 2 wide receivers. The other thing I'll say too is I don't know if they take wide receiver. The more I've thought about it, this is an offense that's going to be heavily based around the run game and play action pass. I could see him sticking with offensive line and being a team that just hopes somebody good is there. You know what I mean?
I 100. You have to take, if Joe Alt's on the board, you go Joe Alt. In my opinion, like this
Yeah.
is, I'm projecting this guy to be like a Penei Sewell type of tackle, and I think you stack him across from Rashawn Slater at the left side. That is probably one of the best tackle duos in the league here in 2 years. Like, I mean, it is up there, and I agree. Like with Greg Roman in town, they bring in Will Dissly as a good blocking tight end. Like they lost Gerald Everett too. Like they don't really have, like they have Hayden Hurst to throw to as far as tight ends are concerned. And I mean that's about it. This team is going to have to rely on the run game a lot. But it should have been O-line the whole way because again the issue last year was Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston are all 6'4" plus. They don't create separation quickly, and a lot of their big plays or what they do are contested catches, things where there aren't a lot of separation involved. And the issue was Justin Herbert did not have time to let these guys get open or at least have a chance at a jump ball because he's getting sacked in 2.5 seconds. So I agree. Tackle's got to be the pick for them. I just don't know who Justin Herbert's going to throw to at this point, right? Like they have 5 receivers on their roster right now. And I've got their depth chart sitting here, but without the depth chart sitting in front of me, I could have named 2 of them. Actually, they have 4 receivers on their depth chart. I was wrong. Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, and Simi Fecco. Like,
Yeah.
there is some work to be done. If there's ever a lock to draft a receiver in the second round, if they don't go there in the first, it's them. Now, again, Minnesota goes to 4 and takes McCarthy after quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. Now, I mean, again, I love Joe Alt. Marvin Harrison's on the board. We've at least got to talk about this now, right? Like,
Well, and I think they're more of a candidate to trade out from 4 than maybe Arizona is. Like, I think there's potential that maybe they're the ones who end up with the 2 first-round picks. And, you know what I mean? Maybe they get when they move back to 11, maybe they get the 3rd guy or the 4th best tackle, and then they take a wide receiver in the later first. You know what I mean? That wouldn't shock me too much. I think for them, gaining draft capital is important right now, especially with John Harbaugh being your coach, because he's going to know all these guys coming out really, really well for the next 2 years. 2 or 3 years is typically that window. So they're going to probably try to accumulate as much draft capital as they can. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting from the Chargers side. They're a team that I kind of want to wait and see because there's got to be a grand plan that I don't see here. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm assuming is going to happen. We're going to see it play out in the draft. So, do you have any more thoughts there?
I don't. Again, like I agree with you. Like I'm curious to see, like what's he building in there. That's how I feel right now. Like what's going on in LA? I'm curious to see what we find out here.
Yeah, and this is a team too, like with the Chargers, right? Like we said, Jim's going to know a lot. Like they're going to get guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round that are going to end up being really good players that we're not expecting. So, don't sleep too much on that. They can get a guard in they'll probably get a guard in like the 5th round that everybody's like, who is this guy? And he's going to end up being a great starter for him. That's just how I feel. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this next trade. Brian Burns to the Giants for a 24 second and a 25 fifth. And then the 5th round pick swap this year. We talked about it a lot when we talked about the Giants being massive losers. Because it is a weird move. He's a great pass rusher, but it doesn't do anything for this team right now, who their biggest problem is the other side of the football. Yep. For Carolina, obviously you're super sad that at one point somebody offered you 2 first rounders and a 2nd rounder, and you turned that down to ultimately take this deal. That's not this GM's fault. He didn't have that other trade offer in front of him, right? So can't put the blame on him there, but yeah, it's still a bad hindsight for sure.
The fact that the entire state of the entire 2 states of the Carolinas, just toss them both in there, are not have their signatures on a petition to have David Tepper forcibly removed as the owner of the Carolina Panthers yet is crazy to me because this guy is just flubbing it left and right as far as the Panthers are concerned. And again, for the Giants, this reminds me a lot of the Raiders adding Christian Wilkins, except they don't have Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers on the other side of the ball. Like they have Darren Waller, Daniel Jones, and fuck all on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, again, what I think is going to be a great defensive line. You telling me Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence line up across from each other? I do not want to play those guys, right? It's not a defensive front that I want to have to face off against once, if not twice a year. But I only have to score 21 points and we win the game. You know, like I'm not, it's not like I'm sitting here worried about the Giants offense by any stretch. So I like the deal. I love the front that New York put together, but overall, there are a lot of holes to fill here, you know, and I don't even think edge rusher was really one of them, right? I mean, Thibodeau, you could have signed Jadeveon Clowney, set him across from Thibodeau. As long as Thibodeau turns into your 1, Clowney's your 2, Dexter Lawrence, I'm fine, but it's not that adding Brian Burns is bad. It's just like it's like when you have an F in 7 classes and you're trying to pass all of them for the semester and you get one of them up to a 95, but the others
Yeah.
are still 55. So you're like, okay, good job in math, but what about like you got
What
six
about
F's?
the other four things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta fix all these too to graduate, brother. That's pulling a 55 to a 95 in math. Great accomplishment. Proud of you. Honestly, that's insane. There's still five things that are keeping you from graduating right now, and you got about 2 weeks to fix them. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mess. We've talked about it enough that I don't want to keep harping on the Giants, but it's just a weird move. It makes no sense to me. I don't get what they're trying to do. So I'm not even going to try to wrap my head around it. We've already referred to this a couple times. Vikings trade for the 23rd pick. They give up their second this year, and then a fifth this year, and then a 25 second. Um, so they give up a lot of capital to get the 23rd pick from Cleveland. It is interesting. I don't know if I see what the long term plan is here. Um, I'm sorry, they got that from Houston. Yes, yeah, it's Houston. They got the pick from Houston, but it was Cleveland's pick originally. So that's why I was twisting my brain. I was like, man, why am I getting that mixed up? But yeah. Uh, So to me, they're positioning to trade up for somebody, right? They
yep,
must they must be in love with JJ McCarthy, like everyone says,
yep.
and they want that draft capital to get into the top 10, and this is what they've kind of pieced together for it. Who knows? Maybe they hold on to it. But I think this to me is a move screaming, hey, we're trying to get into the top 10 there.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is we love, whether it's McCarthy or Penix or whoever it is, we love one of these quarterbacks, and we are going to be damned if we don't sink the ship trying to get that guy. And as far as Houston goes, I mean, more capital for the future, right? This is not a team that needs to win right now. This is
Yeah.
Houston is stacking chips. Now, I do think this is to me is the last time that Houston can make this type of move because as much as you don't need to win right now, you would love to really have a solid 2 year window while CJ Stroud's on a rookie contract, right? So I think this move and the move last year, you're being aggressive last year, you're moving back this year, and into the second. Next year, you make the push, right? Like you're going to do well this year. You're going to take all these chips you've stacked. You make the push next year. You get another year with the fifth year option. Or no, you get 2 years plus the fifth year. You're sitting pretty, going into extension time for CJ Stroud, hopefully with a lot of playoff experience and hopefully, a deep playoff run in one of those years that they can make. So I like the move for Minnesota. I like the move for Houston. It's one of those things where we're not really sure what the picture is, but I'm never going to be upset with the team being aggressive. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
a team being like, we like this guy and we're going to go fucking get him. I'm never going to be like, no, that's what a bad idea. You should never, I'm all for this on both sides.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe somebody slides, right? Like
Oh,
Drake May could slide, Jaden Daniels could slide, and they want the ammo to go up and get that guy. So I ultimately like the move. Um, the next two, we're not going to spend a ton of time on. Deontay Johnson to the Panthers for a 6th-round pick. Um, clearly, we talked about him being an issue in Pittsburgh, right? So Pittsburgh tries to get off of him. For Carolina, sure, he's got enough talent. I'll throw a 6th-rounder at it. It feels very Chase Claypool-y to me, where you're like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that? Sure, just throw it out there, and it ends up just being nothing. He fades into the abyss. So um, it'll kind of be interesting to watch to see what it becomes. But I like them at least trying to add something to that wide receiver room.
I like the addition for Carolina. At the same time, I don't because Pittsburgh has seemed to have very good luck with dumping their star receivers at the right time before things go south. Antonio Brown goes off the cliff when he leaves and goes to Vegas. Juju Smith-Schuster's knee explodes a year after he leaves Pittsburgh, and now they're dumping Deontay Johnson. So we'll see. Is there a scandal or an injury in the future for this guy? I really hope not. Hopefully Bryce Young has a star-studded receiving core, right? Thielen had a really good year last year. You bring in the route runner that can create separation with just pure footwork in Deontay Johnson. I like it a lot, so especially for a 6th-round pick. I mean, you can't turn your nose up at that at all.
All right, jumping into this next one, Jerry Jeudy, the Browns. For a 5th and a 6th, obviously not a huge return for the Broncos, but Jerry Jeudy has mostly been disappointing in his career. I like him as a wide receiver too. For the Browns, it's a little weird to me. You have to kind of What?
I don't. As far as the trade goes, I'm all for it. I'm like, hey
Mm-hmm.
man, I like fourth, fifth, Jerry Judy. I like the guy, good route runner. One missed game away from 1,000 yards a year last year. The confusing part is the contract.
I was like, then you had to pay him, and you paid him a
Uh,
lot for
yeah,
what he is. It made no sense to me.
the money you gave this man is where the beef ensues.
I don't think he's worth the money at all. I'll just be straight up. Like he has a lot to prove.
I don't think he's worth half that money, truthfully.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking to this is a Jerry Judy guy. I have on record said at one point that this guy was a top 10 route runner in the league. I've on the record said that 2 years ago, a year ago, maybe going into this last season. The bottom line is this guy has not caught 1,000 yards in a single season. Again, he's been probably a game away 2 straight years. But the fact remains, I mean, they're paying this guy. I would love to see, actually, I wonder, I want to try to find where he lists as far as like receiver contracts go.
Too high, that's for sure.
Too high, agreed. Like, I don't know where it's going to be at. But like this guy is just getting paid way too. The contract extension just tanks this. As far as the trade goes, I like the trade. I like the value you get. Jerry Judy should not be the 18th highest paid receiver in the game this year. He's getting $19 million a year.
Yeah, too much.
No.
Way too much.
Why didn't you just pay Amari Cooper $20 million a year? Why didn't you just keep him? Or no, they got him. They got him, yeah.
They got him. Yeah.
Because the Raiders didn't want to pay him 20 a year. That's what it was.
No, it was the Cowboys who didn't want to pay him. Because the
Oh,
Raiders traded him
yeah.
to the Cowboys, and then the Cowboys traded him to Cleveland. So
Yeah, you're right. Jerry Judy is flanked on this list, which is funny. It's by another Cowboys receiver. Brandon Cooks also makes 19 a year, and then Deontay Johnson. So, yeah, not he does not belong on this list at all, in my opinion.
it's a weird move. I just don't like it. But who knows? Maybe it'll be the difference makers for the Browns who, are paying a quarterback $45 million a year who doesn't play, and when he does play, looks like garbage. So
Yeah, and maybe being across from Amari Cooper helps him out in the long run, right? Like he's
maybe,
always had
yeah,
the borderline one. Cortland Sutton can't really get a beat on him either. Now playing across from Amari Cooper, David Njoku, maybe we see the step forward. But if anything, it's going to be even harder to be worth the money when you got 3 mouths to feed versus 2 versus
yeah,
1. So
yeah. It'll be interesting. Justin Fields was traded for a conditional 6th-round pick. It could turn into a 4th-round pick if he plays more than 51% of the snaps. Um, we talked about this a little bit. I like it because, again, if Russell Wilson doesn't play good, you got Justin Fields. Give him a shot. And you're going to have to pay one of these guys at the end of the year. And you don't have to pay either of them, though. Like, that's the nice
sure.
part is they can walk away from this and say, hey, Justin, thanks for the season. It didn't work out. You didn't play enough, or we didn't like what we saw in practice. And, we're going to go draft our quarterback of the future in the 1st round. And you're a free agent. Go do whatever you want to do. And they can do the same thing to Russ. So to me, it was a low risk, high reward situation here where you're giving up essentially, even if you gave up the 4th for him, we all thought he was maybe going to draw a 2nd round, maybe even a 1st. People were like, "Oh, late 1st for him wouldn't be insane." So
yeah, there was the ridiculous reports that pick 8 was in play for this guy at one point. And again, we never bought stock in that for a second, but there were talks apparently that happened, right? Those insider reports you were talking about earlier said that at one point. So I'm not a fan of having Justin Fields play in my division. I've always had a lot of faith in Justin, and I think a stable environment like Pittsburgh might be the thing that does it for him. But again, is he going to get out from behind Russ this year? The 5th-year option looms for him. If he comes on and plays well, like that might not be a terrible thing for them, right? Say Russ doesn't pan out, Justin Fields plays 12 games of good football. You get him at 25 million to get another year of looking at him before you pay him long term. It could work out really well for them. And again, even if it was a 3rd rounder and it's going to be a 4th at max, I think it's a pretty damn good deal for them. And as far as Chicago, they're the insider reports. They had better deals on the table, this, that, whatever. We obviously have no clue what validity there is to that. What I can tell you is you would have got a hell of a lot more for him had you traded him probably a week or 2 earlier. You can't.
maybe, I don't
Maybe,
know. I don't think the market seeing what he went for. I don't think the market was there.
If the market wasn't hot for him, I'll tell you that the market's definitely not hot after 6 quarterbacks get moved around and teams are already starting to fill holes. Like
Yeah,
you can't tell me the Raiders wouldn't have given up a third to have him come in and compete instead of Minshew. Like
they would have been better off, I think, waiting till post draft because I think there was a lot of optimism from teams that it's like, oh, there's 6 guys that we can get in the first 2 rounds, and we're going to get one of them. I would have waited post draft, and then
yeah,
whoever was left with their chair, you know what I mean? If it was Las Vegas at that point, they're going, yeah, Gardner, and Gardner can be a bridge guy, and then we'll have a competition between him and Fields. Like I think that
you
would have been better case than what it ended up being for sure.
you trade him early or you trade him late, right? You trade him before the pieces have fallen, so at least
Yeah.
if somebody comes after him, you're like, hey, well, here's this guy before Gardner and Kenny and Dobbs and Darnold and Kirk and all these guys start flying around. And again, I agree. The second best time is when you see who gets left with their ass out in the wind and no plan at quarterback this next year, right? So I agree. They kind of moved him at the worst time, but it benefits Pittsburgh in the long run, which I'm not a fan of. So
Yeah. God. All right. Moving on to the last trade here. L'Jarius Sneed was traded to the Titans for a 25 third. I don't know. It's not really a needle mover either side. It makes Tennessee somewhat interesting in the secondary. Again, it doesn't fix their biggest issue of like what they needed on the other side of the ball. And the Chiefs at least got something, right? He didn't walk for free. They got a third. So
yeah, personally, I think for KC, I would have almost rather hold him until the deadline and see if the market kind of heats up for him because he was playing well. If he comes out and plays well again, maybe you get a little bit more at the deadline. Now, the thing that will change my mind about that is they freed up about $19-20 million in cap space with the trade. What do you do with that money now? Because if they can go get a splashdown, whether it's Justin Simmons or Jadeveon or any of these guys that are left, right? And you could get 2 guys. Like, I don't know if there's a $20 million guy left on the market, right? You can go get Odell and Jadeveon at 10 apiece and call it a day. Like, I don't think that's a horrible move to just I think that's where Kansas City is going to run into some troubles in the years to come is they are paying either 30 million or 5 million, right? Rookie contract or top 5 contract at his position. And I think it's okay to just sign some mid-level guys that are going to fill in, play some rotation minutes for you every once in a while. And maybe they'll go get Stephon Gilmore or obviously they have a need at corner now with losing L'Jarius. So what they do with that freed up money is a big part to me and kind of seeing where this plays out. Again, the
yeah.
deal was kind of low. We talked about those insider reports, and I think the report was the medicals are a little shaky. Maybe his physicals aren't great or something along those lines, but it's definitely lower than what I would have thought. But again, better than nothing, better than what the Bears got for Keenan Allen.
So I can report this. My wife told me this before I came in here. She was like, "Oh, by the way, uh, it's rumored that OBJ broke up with Kim Kardashian, so OBJ could now sign with the Chiefs
Mm,
because there was rumors they weren't going to be able to sign him because OBJ was dating Kim K, and
yeah,
Kim K and Taylor
Taylor
Swift had beef.
Swift. Yeah.
So now that that's freed up, maybe it is because he signed him with her, and he said,
Maybe that's why. That's why he had to break. He's like, well, I'm going to Kansas City. So either you're gonna have to get over this and move past it, or we're not gonna be a thing going forward.
yeah.
So
I don't think he'll sign. I don't think OBJ in
well,
Kansas City makes
apparently
any sense.
he wants 13 million still, and I couldn't tell you a team in the league that wants that guy at 13 million. Like
No.
we paid him 18, and again, he didn't get the opportunities. It didn't go well in Baltimore as well as I would have wanted it to. But
He's not the same guy. He just really isn't. You know what I mean? That's the
if
sad part.
I want to know what he looks like without tearing his ACL in the Super Bowl because he was so pivotal for LA in the first half of that Super Bowl. And legitimately, it was not crazy to be like, this guy's on his way to a Super Bowl MVP right now. Like, if you first half Super Bowl MVP is Odell Beckham before he tears his ACL. Like, I have no doubts in my mind from remembering what I watched in that game. And I still think he's got some juice in the tank, but it's got to be accepted that this is probably a 700 to 800 a year guy. If you stack him across from one of the best receivers in the league, he's no longer a guy that can succeed across from a one. To me, he's a guy that needs to be across from the best to succeed, right? Put him across from A.J. Brown. I like this, right? Put him across from Tyreek Hill. Hell, he'd go to Buffalo right now. I'd be like, oh, okay, all right. Put him across from Stephon Diggs. You have Curtis Samuel playing some other minutes out there. Like that I love. But I'll tell you that no contender has $13 million to spend on Odell Beckham Jr. right now. That is the problem. He's a $6 to $7 million a year guy. And at 30 years old, nobody is going to pay for the name on your jersey. They need the production at this point, So
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where he could even go that would make sense, and it's just
back to New York.
Yeah, I mean,
Put him with Daniel Jones.
It would be a good. It'd actually be like, at least they're trying. They're trying to make that offense. He'd be wide receiver 1 there.
I was like, is he their best receiver at that point?
I think so.
God.
I think he's wide receiver 1 for a couple teams. So.
Tell you what, folks, here either next year or the year after, somebody's going to get a damn good head coach in Brian Daboll, because I think the Giants just can't fucking figure it out, and he's going to hit the market again. And boy, oh boy, somebody's going to get a damn sure head coach. And, honestly, I'd be okay with Baltimore flopping out the next 2 years just to get Brian Daboll if that happens to be the case. So,
somebody's going to get a great OC first, and I think that's probably what's going to
happen. I don't know if he would need an OC restart to get back. Do you think he would?
Yeah, probably at this point.
Maybe after 2 more years of bad football, people were like, okay, I need to refresh the memory here. But
you say that, and we were like, oh, there's no way Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, none of these guys make it. And it's like, they all made it.
Fucking all of them didn't get a job.
All of them didn't get a job.
Yeah, so that's true.
It will take some time. I think all of those guys are coaches again. Belichick maybe not, but I don't think it's as easy as it once was.
I hope Belichick can put the necessity to be the GM aside so he can coach for another 2 years and get the win record. But I don't know if he's going to.
I'm going to throw this out here. I'm just going to say it now, and you can be like, this is insane. Don't be shocked if he's coaching in Jacksonville next year. I could see Doug Peterson, if they have another underperforming year like they did last year.
Yeah.
Doug Peterson's out, and then you bring in Bill Belichick. I'm just throwing it out there.
For both jobs, or just as the head coach?
What do you mean?
As the president of football operations?
No. He'd just be head coach at this point. I think he's ready to admit that. Yeah,
I think if he admitted that this last offseason, he would have gotten hired. But I think that's a lot of teams. That was, again, the insider report was he wanted roster control, and teams are like, I'm not handing my roster over to a 76-year-old.
Or Dallas. Those are the two I think are the most legit.
God,
him and Dallas. I think that would be. I mean, that's how Parcells went out in Dallas. So.
Jesus. Bill Belichick's going to his contract signing. He's like, all right, I will sign this. He's like sitting across from Jerry Jones. He's like, I will sign this if I don't have to talk to you for the rest of the year. He's like, lose my fucking number for a calendar year and I'll sign this sheet right now.
It's the perfect 1-2 punch because you have an owner that says too much and a head coach that says too little. So
true.
They would balance each other back out. So
true. Very true.
I think that's all she wrote for this episode.
I would agree. Well, folks, if you made it this far, check yourself into a mental hospital. Go outside and get some air because, boy, we talked about a whole lot of football there, and you probably need to catch your breath a little bit. So, again, if you haven't went and listened to our most listened to episode ever, go check out part 1 for our winners and losers of free agency, kind of more of a team-based free agency episode after we got into all the nitty-gritty today. Again, we will have our mock draft episode coming out. What was it, the 17th? Do I have that number right?
We're recording at like the 16th or the 17th. So, yeah.
Okay. Yes, we'll get the mock draft episode out before the first round happens on the 25th. We're probably going to get you those. Hopefully, we can record those reactions on the 26th. Get that episode the week out or 2 days after the first round. We'll kind of get grades and things of that nature out afterwards. And then barring anything major, we'll just be kind of setting up and getting ready for the preseason, doing all of our pick'ems and all those things for the records and award predictions and all that jazz for next season. So probably got 2 more off-season episodes, maybe 3 off-season episodes in the books still to come. but they're going to be a little ways down the road. So again, check out free agency winners and losers if you haven't had a chance to do that yet. But until we see you come draft time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you then.